So before we jump right into the festivities, I want to show you a substantial build change for maximum damage. We had to sacrifice enhanced dodge, energy recovery, and focus duration for more damage, which...
It's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Considering none of those except enhanced dodge are really that helpful, this isn't really a bad thing for me. I also switched out the confused gun for the slow gel gun because, if you've noticed, I never got any real confusion gun value, so I decided to swap it out. With that, let's hop back right into chapter 5. So the second we start off chapter 5, I notice
I'm on this part? Bro, what?
This part takes place in an area with no ground. You may be wondering, but Em, if there's no ground, where do you stand? You don't. This makes this very easy fight not so easy. Reaching him in this section is a nightmare because you just have no idea where he is ground-wise half of the fight. Unless you've played this game, you won't really understand how weird it is to drive up or dash up to him, and you're somehow underneath him while it looks like you're both standing on the same ground. But after that one death, we easily beat Starscream and move on to... After he clapped back all the way in part 1, I was afraid of having to fight him in this section with his little guards, and with him even getting heavy units halfway through this. But we beat him first try, and this is the last time we have to fight him in the game. I don't know how I hyped him up to be this extremely difficult menace in my head for him to only take 1 life off of me all run, but onwards I suppose. Apparently this whole area is a boss rush, because right after him we run into the boss with the best theme in the game, Shockwave. Now, unlike Blitzwing, there's more of a legit reason to be afraid of Shockwave. See, with Blitzwing, his only main threatening aspect was him having hyper armor through everything. But with Shockwave, his attacks can cover a good chunk of the screen, and unlike most attacks in this game, the dodge hitbox seems to be extremely small. If you fail to dodge one of his many weird hitbox attacks, you're going to be eating a lot of damage, and since we're on prime difficulty, that's a big problem. Now, I was about to go get an easy victory, but...
If I can just... Are you serious?
How the hell has this happened 2 times in this run? Anyways, after those 2 deaths, we beat him and this is the first and last time we see him. So that's a big threat out of the way. Man, this theme's just so good. I'm just gonna let it play till the end of the chapter. So now we... Wait, what the fuck? That's it? That's the whole chapter? So we start off with a quick premonition of a future fight into an easy escape section, an easy parkour section, then random Insecticons just to spite me. Getting the run back, they throw more parkour at me, but you get shot at this time. After all that, we end up at a section I was the most afraid of.
Y'all wait, oh no. This is the protection section, isn't it? This is what's gonna test me, IQ.
It will.
If they start off with heavy units, I'm crying. I'm crying.
This section is the only reason I said no ultimates until chapter 5. I'm confident I can beat everything in this game in a fist fight, but these protection sections are just brutal. They are by far the most irritating parts of the game. I only wanted to use ultimates in this area specifically, so when you see me use them here, this is the first and only section I'm using them in.
This better say more than 20%, or I'm gonna lose my mind.
The other problem with this section is it is painfully long. It only goes up in increments of 10, and when you die, just like before, it restarts at 1. I tried to not use ultimates before, but I noticed they were a necessity here. Even though I could now use a powerful tool, that doesn't mean it's smooth sailing from here on out. So I die again, and I almost ruined the run by breaking the rules here.
There's an augment that gives you like ally heal, yeah. I know I can't heal, but I'm hoping if I give myself a healing item, that it heals him.
With me completely forgetting the no item rule is set for this challenge. Luckily, I was so invested into beating this section, I completely forgot to use any of the items. So, I had essentially nerfed myself for no reason. I ended up dying like before, but I completely forgot I had an auto-revive, which carries us to the completion of this section. Afterwards, I expected it to be all sunshine and rainbows, but... this section didn't look that menacing, but apparently, this is the chapter that turns the game into Dark Souls. The Seekers and the Insecticons were absolutely beating my ass. The worst part is, I thought they'd end this section here, but... if you're wondering why this whole part has me in pain, let me explain. These Grasshopper Insecticons have a 1-frame kick. The second they flash, you have to dodge or else you're getting your ass kicked to the curb. Seekers are self-explanatory. The 2 big guys have a good chunk of health. And after all of that work that I had to put in to get past this part, there's another section right after this with 8 times the grasshoppers and 2 heavy units, and there's no checkpoint between these 2 sections. I beat it with surprisingly only 3 deaths, and this ended up happening again somehow.
This is what happened last time, bro. I don't even think I can hit him.
But finally, at the actual end of this long section, it caps off with us fighting. I was actually dreading this fight because normally this thing always hits me on normal runs, but for this run, his attacks couldn't even hit me when I had this little pip of health left. I'm assuming it has something to do with being unable to die on this section unless he directly hits you, but honestly I don't know. After that we end up at another part I was dreading. He's immune to focus and he floats in the air for most of the fight. With my gun sucking, this should be an incredibly hard fight. Am I just a reverse hype man or something? Yeah, you read that right. We beat him in 34 seconds with no deaths. His health bar is actually surprisingly small, so after a few vehicle attacks he was pretty much dead. We get to another driving section and...
Okay, alright. Alright, y'all.
It's almost like whenever there's a heavy on screen I suffer. They leave a ton on enemies on screen, but we drive past all of them, and we end up in a boss fight I completely forgot we had to redo.
Oh yeah, you have to fight Sound Blast.
Almost instantly I'm reminded Soundwave is not an easy boss in this game. I'm not sure why I hyped up Shockwave so much and completely forgot about Soundwave. It may just be because of the challenge, but Soundwave is pretty difficult for the most part. Him being able to control the floor and having his little minions constantly attack you the whole time made this a real problem. This boss probably drove me the most insane so far because of all the things you have to visually process while fighting him. But eventually we defeat him and we even snag a trophy to close off chapter 6. If I take anything away from this challenge, I'm heavily noting how difficult Soundwave actually is, at least on Prime. I feel like he's been the hardest boss we've had to deal with thus far. The low damage makes it so you can't nuke him like you usually would, and dying from 2 hits from almost anything he does made him a real threat. So
this is the part where I'm editing this. I'm gonna go like, start at chapter 7. We had an excellent start, dying at the first ground soldier. I'm gonna say something just like that. I'll probably just edit that in.
yeah, I will. Ass. So anyways, yeah, they hit us with some real difficulty foreshadowing for this first part of chapter 7, starting us with some heavy units. This ending part of the chapter is made up of multiple enemy gauntlets to keep you occupied, so you can assume there's going to be a few deaths going forwards. We push through a Seeker section, somehow with no deaths, and then we run into Motormaster again. But I guess he wanted revenge for the first time because...
You're just getting your homeboy hurt more because I am going to use and abuse the focus that you're giving me and destroy him with it. I am gonna use and abuse.
Not sure what was wrong with me in this final section, but things that weren't a problem became a big problem in this part. We finished the Motormaster section, they loved to torture me and put another heavy unit section. They literally made a part full of normal units just to spite me for this final level.
That wasn't even fair.
Then the next chunk is just bombshells, which really means all you'd have to do is dodge, right? So obviously, I died. You know we don't have nice things around these parts. The only thing this section helped me realize is that these bugs don't actually have an exploding animation, they just kinda... Definitely in this part, Streamy was starting to feel the length of this section. And for good reason. After the mandatory Seeker death, we run into both Thundercracker and Skywarp. If you've noticed, both of these bosses are Seekers, so it wouldn't be that much of a stretch if I told you.
Shit.
It's only funny because these two aren't even difficult. This whole run I've just been suffering deaths to Seekers. So after beating Skywarp and Thundercracker growling at me...
Homeboy did not just growl at me, bro.
We beat the both of them. And after all that suffering, we can see Megatron. This is it. It's time to close out the... You said I have to fight all the Insecticons? Constructicons? Okay, to be honest, this section was honestly pretty brutal. It may have been the most difficult section all run. It's not that the Constructicons themselves are an Avenger level threat, but they all have quite high HP, and if your companions die, all of them will attack you at the same time. This section took a lot of deaths. So many where it took 20 to 30 minutes for me to get past it. For the sake of time, I'm going to cut it down for you guys, but just so you know, Mixmaster is the main threat this entire section. You may be asking, why him? What's he matter for? Well, his little goop puddles can't be focus dodged past when they're on the ground. They don't have clear indicators when he fires them due to how many enemies are on the screen. When you fight him, he can simply run away and put them on the ground. If you follow him, there's a chance you might run into one of his attacks. So yeah, let's save time with another death montage. So after all of that, we finally beat them and...
No.
Yeah, they turn into Devastator on the spot. When I said this is the hardest section in the game, I was not joking. We fight him for a bit with no deaths and without getting hit for his entire first phase, and then we get to the part I was the most afraid of. If you remember last episode, Menasar gave us a bit of trouble, and even to a lesser extent, so did Devastator in part 1. The problem with them being together is the fact that they visually clutter the screen. Together they take up about a third of the screen, and their attacks take up 2/3 of the screen. And along with all the other stuff I mentioned in their own retrospective parts, and their 2 chunky health bars, you can imagine they managed to take a few lives off of us. I wasn't too happy in the VOD either.
Very annoying. Like, can anyone visually tell what's happening right here?
And my thoughts haven't changed 2 days after filming it either. We clutch out beating Devastator, and we're just left with Menasar. After beating Devastator, it's a lot more manageable fighting Menasar, but in the back of my mind I was terrified Devastator's death wasn't an actual checkpoint, so I really didn't want to fail. Luckily, we don't even have to worry about it as we deal with him. The Constructicons definitely tested my sanity, and in comparison to that, Devastator and Menasar weren't even that bad. After that, we move on to the final fights of the game, and technically our final fight is Sideswipe. We have to fight Big Bad Megatron himself. You're probably expecting me to say this is one of the hardest fights in the game. No! Megatron is actually one of the easiest parts of this whole challenge. His moveset has a lot of volcano spike whips and all this other crazy stuff, but this is a one-on-one fight. And unlike the few normal one-on-one fights that took a few lives from me, Megatron doesn't have any sneaky or weird moves. The cheekiest thing Megatron can do is spawn a volcano under you, which he doesn't even do to me in this entire fight. If you're decent at the combat in this game and you're good at timing dodges, no matter how much health he had or no matter how little damage I did, I was pretty much fine against him. So with a move I couldn't do before, I long shot sniped him with the slow gel gun as he prepares his black hole attack, and we beat him with no deaths. It looks like the end, but we have one more fight with Megatron in space! This part's almost exactly identical to the first fight, but we're in another wacky wonky space section, just like with Starscream at the start of this video. Megatron loses access to his volcanoes, and all of a sudden, I'm Optimus. Since I said I'd only win as Sideswipe, I decided against using Optimus's Overdrive, which I did accidentally press once, but it didn't hit Megatron, and I die anyways because I pressed the wrong button again. Next fight starts off pretty bad, and I end up dying again. This is where you probably expect me to start listing off why this fight's hard like I've been doing this whole run, but really, the main problem is the lack of ground in my muscle memory making me want to press L1 after every single combo. Long story short, I knew this was the end of the road, and my brain was acting kinda lazy. So on my serious attempt, I noticed either Megatron has way less health or Optimus hits like, well, a truck. We end up beating him up real easily, and we cruise through the fight literally taking no damage and kicking him into the final cutscene where Optimus socks Megatron and we officially end the story mode. To be honest, that wasn't as bad as I was expecting. Sure, the total death counter looks pretty bad, but a lot of the parts I hyped up in my mind weren't even that hard. I definitely say this is a difficult challenge, and my biggest takeaway would be don't lowball how difficult prime difficulty actually can be, and also don't underestimate that final Constructicon fight. But it's been fun playing through this game again and doing a challenge I bet no one's done before. Thanks to you all for joining me on this wild ride, and I'll see you guys next time. Who knows? There might even be one more thing left to accomplish.